Hey there, it's Robert Budd, and you are listening to The Robert Budd Show. And today we have Michael Castrogiovanni, and this is one of my dearest friends. The guy has been such an influence for me in my life, and he is like such an interesting guy. So he went to school at San Diego State University for kinesiology. And so he is in the fitness industry, and he has been for a long time. I guess the first time he went to the gym for himself was 14 years old, and he tells the story about that. And it was a World's Gym that was owned by Mark Rifkin, which Mark in himself is just a huge influencer in the fitness industry, and especially in the powerlifting, gymnastics, kettlebell industry. Just an amazing guy. So Michael and we talk about him living at a monastery up in Big Sur. We talk a lot about his faith and the path he's taken with that. Of course, we talk about kettlebells because that's what we have in common, a couple of kettlebell guys. And so Michael does this really great thing. It's called kettlebell passing, so it's partner passing. And it's when two people face off and they swing a kettlebell and they pass it to each other. So up to two bells. So one bell and two bell, which is fun, exciting, and may seem a little dangerous until you do it. But we talk about that, that's super amazing. We just talk about some of the influences in his life, like Jeremy Laport, Jeff Martone, Pavel, and some of the takeaways inside of Mike's life from going to India, experiencing different cultures and things like that. So without further ado, here's Michael. So we are outside, and I am with Michael Castrogiovanni, and so I'm happy to have you. And we're just sitting here chatting outside at Moonlight Beach. So this is just literally, we're going to record our conversation just BSing.
Right? Okay, that sounds good to me.
Sounds cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
That's usually how all mine go.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing, how I want to start, I'm just going to dig right in. How I want to start it is I was talking about how my life is structured and how I calendar stuff and all that kind of stuff. And you said your life, you said it's not structured.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit more about that. You said something really interesting. I can't recreate it, but go ahead.
I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Like coming here this week to San Diego, I had no idea who I was going to see or how I was going to see them, and I just kind of send a blast out a text to people I would like to see, and I just sort of let the chips fall where they may. I don't really know what my life is leading me towards, but I know that it's leading me towards something. It's just kind of the way I've always done it, and it's been really effective, and I feel like it leaves room for sort of what I call miracles or magic. When I start to try to structure my life too much, I notice I get stressed out and frustrated, and I get a little bit of anxiety. But when I kind of trust that things are going to work out, and I'm going to see who I'm supposed to see, that usually sets me at ease and lets me be more present with the people that I'm seeing. So I find it to be an effective way to interface and to build relationship.
And you've always been like that ever since you're a kid, or does this came about after college, or what?
I think it was probably an after college thing more so because I hated the structure of college. I always disliked the structure of school because I felt so confined, and I felt like it was keeping me from living my life per se. So I would say it probably more so started happening after college, probably even more so after I went to the monastery for the first stint. After spending time there, I really kind of learned that things just sort of happen at their own pace, and everything does get taken care of as long as you move in the direction of taking care of it. If you blatantly disregard it or don't do things that are moving in that direction, obviously it's not going to get done, but things end up, getting done in their own time. And that was a valuable lesson from sort of the monastic life.
What led you to go to the monastery?
That's a great question. What led me to go to the monastery? I was actually living here in San Diego. I had a really, really cool girlfriend who she and I were looking at getting married and possibly buying a house and doing that whole thing. And I don't know, there was something inside me that felt like there was more to life than doing that. And as much as I loved her and appreciated her as a partner, I didn't necessarily feel like she was the one. So I had visited the monastery in 2000 after my aunt had passed away, and it was a place that I went to grieve. And I don't know about you, but as a man, I've been taught that crying's not appropriate, and feelings should always be sort of pushed down. So the thought of actually grieving the loss of my aunt here in San Diego in my real life, so to speak, scared me, and I didn't really have anyone that I felt safe to turn to. So I had heard about the monastery when I lived in San Jose, and when I was going to West Valley College from an instructor named Randy Fujishin. And he would talk about it whenever he would come back from it, and I would always notice there was something different about him. And he was an amazing guy regardless, but there was always a little bit more of a twinkle in his eye, or like just a lightness to him when he'd come back from his retreats. So I just always said, I'm going to go there someday. And it just turned out that when my aunt passed, it was a good place to grieve. And literally, the first time I went up there, I spent the first 2 days just kind of crying and trying to be okay with that. And that was the beginning of when I sort of realized, like, man, I really don't address my emotions, and I don't feel comfortable addressing them. I don't like feeling them. I've historically used exercise as a means by which to not necessarily feel them. So having that really good experience there led me to continue going up there. And in 2002, I went up and I ran into a really good friend of mine who was a mentor of mine at the gym that I started working out at when I was 14 years old. And it was a chance encounter. Didn't expect to see him, thought he might have been dead or in jail, because that was the kind of dude he was. But no, he was living at the monastery and working in the maintenance department. So as a result of that interaction or that meeting, he invited me to come up more frequently. So I started going more frequently. I got to know some of the monks, started sharing some exercise information with them, kind of guiding them a little bit in the physical fitness, because while they're experts in spirituality, sometimes their physicality gets the back seat to their being. So, and as a result of that, one of the monks approached me at one point and asked me if I'd ever thought about, spending some time there. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, maybe like a few months or, more. And I said, yeah, but, I'm in school, I got student loans, I'm working, so I always had an excuse. And right when I was getting ready to close on a house down here, I sort of realized, like, this is not really what I want. I don't really want this. And my girlfriend at the time said, why don't you do a retreat up at the monastery and kind of get clear? So I did, and when I came back from the monastery, I knew that I needed to kind of uproot and go spend some time up there and get a little more clear. So fortunately, she was super supportive, really awesome woman. I know a lot of women who would have been like, absolutely not, you're not going. But she was like, yeah, I support your process, and I love you, and I want what's best for you, which was also kind of a new thing for me. To have a partner that was that supportive of me. So, so I ended up going up and staying up for 3 months, and then at the end of 3 months, I stayed for 3 more. So the first stint was a total of 6 months, and I was their personal trainer in exchange for room and board and spiritual guidance.
For how long was the whole stint? How long did you end up staying up there?
That whole stint was a 6-month stint.
Yeah.
And then I broke at the end of 6 months. They wanted me to start considering doing like a observership, which would mean I was more so looking at becoming a monk. And it was very clear to me that being a monk wasn't in my cards, but that being able to exist in the monastic space and spend time alone and really sort of deal with and confront feelings and emotions was something that I needed to do. So when they asked me if I was interested, I said no. I think it's best that I go on and try to get back into the real world, quote unquote. So yeah.
What were some of the takeaways that you got from being in that atmosphere, whether it was books that you read or time spent with yourself, or even the influences of the other monks there? Okay, so say that again. That was a lot of questions. Yeah, I know. I just threw a bunch of stuff on. Like, what can you say that you took the most from? Yeah.
What was like the biggest takeaway?
Yeah.
Time is relative. Relationship is key, and discernment, like the process of getting clear and taking time to determine whether or not something's true, were the three of the big ones. And then I would say, patience, because I would, in the beginning, the first few weeks, if you ever go up and spend a significant amount of time, you'll see that it takes a little while to unwind, and depending on how hectic of a life that you're currently living, it may take longer, right? And I was coming from San Diego, and I was go, always working and always just trying to survive down here, and I was a little bit impatient with my process. I wanted to be more at peace and more at ease and more like the guys that were up there, but I think I failed to recognize that they've been there, most of them the better part of a lifetime. So patience, definitely.
It's pretty huge.
Yeah. Well, I think one day I had a sort of an epiphany, if you will, that patience pretty much solves everything. Like there's very little that patience won't solve, and I was raised to believe that you got to take care of stuff immediately, and if you don't, it's going to get worse. And very few situations are that way. If you cut an artery, that's one of the situations where it's that way. But short of that, a lot of things, if you just kind of give them patience and let them play out, they'll take care of themselves, or you'll see the best path to apply yourself. And I think that's part of what leads to what we were talking about initially, is not having such a structured life, is being patient with the process and trusting that your steps will be guided as you go, and having faith in something bigger than yourself.
Can you find this somewhere besides like where would somebody find it? Like myself, I don't really see myself going for 6 months and doing this type of thing. If you had, for me, how would you suggest I go about finding that same?
I think you can find it anywhere, really. I think I just needed something so drastic to have the perspective. But where I ended up really finding it was in my heart. So anywhere that you can more deeply connect with what's in your heart, I think you can find it. I was just dealing with a lot of stuff and trying to, again, being impatient, trying to figure things out. I figured that by putting myself in that type of environment, it would happen faster. And it may or may not have. I don't know, because I didn't go the other route, so I don't know what would have happened had I stayed down here, bought a house, gotten married, and started going down that path. But yeah, you can do it anywhere. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Because that's really what it boils down to. What are your intentions? Intentions precede everything.
Is there any kind of educational process at the monastery?
So that's kind of, there is if you want to be a monk. There's definitely, it's up to like an 8-year process to discern whether or not monastic life is right for you. But part of what I liked about it for me was that as a worker, there's no real structure in the education process, but you have open access to their library, which is just packed with spiritual texts from every single philosophy, every single religion, every single background you could possibly imagine. So it's cool in that sense, where I was able to kind of guide my own process again, or allow it to be guided, depending on how you want to look at it. So to answer your question, yes, there is, and no, there isn't.
Yeah.
It depends on who you are.
What was some of the books that you read that was an impact on you, or that like you would gift somebody that it really made an impact on you that you would want to give it away to somebody else?
There's my favorite one. I actually read it the very first time I went when I was grieving the loss of my aunt, and it really helped with the process, and that was called Awareness. I believe the Perils and Possibilities of Reality by Anthony DeMello. And that book sort of shook me to my core, and I think that's a good book for anybody. And then his second one, or I don't know if it's his second one, but another one he wrote called Rediscovering Life. That one definitely rocked me too. Ones that I liked reading, or a book that I really liked reading that was just enjoyable and eye-opening, but for different ways than, say, Awareness or Rediscovering Life, was the Philokalia. And it's basically writings from, I believe, 1st century to 3rd century Christian mystics, or the Desert Fathers. Just beautiful writings on love and peace and things of that nature. And it's a 4-volume book, so it's an investment. And I understand that a lot of people don't have. I had time, so I put it into that, and I'm thankful that I did, because it just kind of reaffirmed that like love is truly the answer. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that to people who want to go deeper into it. What else did I really like? I like the Tao Te Ching a lot. That just kind of sort of sums things up in very simple and very profound ways. Yeah, those are the ones that stand out right now. If I think of anything else while we're talking, I'll throw them out. But that's basically all I did when I was there, was read.
Yeah.
Those are the gold mines for me.
Cool. I know you from kettlebells, of course. Like we, have instructed together and used to be with RKC together. How did your path of fitness and working out in the field of strength, where'd that start?
Where'd it start?
Yeah.
Initially it started, my brother used to work out, and he was 6 years older than me. So, he was always someone I kind of looked up to. So I kind of got my first taste of working out through him. But when I was 14, there was a World Gym around the corner from where I grew up. And I used to go to school next door to the World Gym. So every morning when I would walk to school, I would see these just massive monsters throwing around weight. And I can remember thinking, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, I want to do that. How long before I can do that? And I just thought it was super cool. And so when I turned 14, I went in, and Mark Rifkin owned the gym. And Rifkin made me go get a note from my mom and dad saying that I could work out at the gym, because you had to be 16 in order to work out, and I was only 14. So started working out. My mom and dad were like, yeah, we'd rather you do that than get into drugs, so you can go lift weights. So I did, and Rifkin actually kind of took me under his wing and mentored me quite a bit. Taught me how to squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, the basics. And that was kind of it. The guy who I ran into up at the monastery, the one who invited me to keep coming back, was actually the maintenance guy at the World Gym. And he also took an interest in me and kind of guided me and directed me. And he used to say to me, you got to look at, sort of the anatomy and physiology of it too. You don't just want to be a meathead. You got to have an understanding of why things are happening. And so I followed his advice. And Rifkin, when I was getting ready to come down to San Diego State, he said, what are you going to get your degree in? And I said, well, I guess sociology. And he's like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm just going to go get a degree. And he goes, why don't you look into kinesiology? I was like, what's kinesiology? And he says, well, it's the study of human movement. So he gave me a kinesiology book. He's like, read this. If you like it, get in contact with San Diego State and see if you can, switch majors. And I read the book, and I'm like, dude, yeah, no-brainer. So I called SDSU, and at the time, sociology was impacted. and kines was not. So it was an easy transition, and yeah, so I went down that path and studied kines at San Diego State and liked it, and just kind of kept going that route. So I've sort of been a kinesiologist all along. It just took knowing that there was something called kinesiology to study. And and it's evolved from there. I mean, through the RKC, through muscle activation techniques, through my own personal studies, Qigong and wrestling, of course, and things like that. But that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for kettlebells.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We wouldn't know me if it wasn't for Rifkin.
Yeah.
Because Rifkin introduced me to kettlebells in 2001. And he said, dude, you got to check this thing out. And it kicked my ass. And I thought, man, I want to learn more about this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what led me down that path.
Those are my first experience with the kettlebells. You know, I was powerlifting, and I met Pavel, and he's like, well, you got to go get kettlebells. You know, I mean, that's just what's next for you.
No-brainer,
Yeah,
right?
no-brainer, yeah. And I was like, okay, kettlebells. And so I got his books and some kettlebells, and they humbled me more than being humbled in martial arts, you know.
As they tend to do, right?
And I'm like, well, if it in like less than 10 minutes, they've humbled me this much, there must be something to them. So I just kept studying and kept doing them, and you know, I don't know, 12 years later, whatever it is, still doing them. Right. They'll still be around.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. And it's amazing how they've grown in popularity. I remember, like in 2004, you couldn't find them anywhere. Mm-hmm. There's nowhere to be found. Well, 2001 they were nowhere to be found, but nobody knew what it was. But 2004, 2005, and 2006, all of a sudden they started getting steam. 2007, and then now they're pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, they've got little pink ones, you know, that are being flung around, all ballet-ish.
I'm into it. Whatever gets people moving. Yeah. Whatever gets people moving.
Since being in the fitness industry for so long, or into fitness, into your well-being, what are the myths or the biggest myth that you would like to put an end to?
The biggest myth?
Yeah. Or maybe a couple.
That's a good question. I don't know. Can you give me an example or two of like what you mean by myths?
Myth,
I'm not sure.
Like, you know, there's some bodybuilding myths. If you eat certain foods, it'll have you gain more, you know, more mass in a certain amount of time. Or if you do this certain workout, this bicep workout, you'll for sure get 21-inch arms in 3 weeks. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah. That's can we come back to that one?
Yeah,
I'd like to
absolutely.
think about that.
Yeah. So that brings me to another thing I was thinking of is with the spirituality and what is it that maybe in the same realm as myths of like, I don't know anything about monks or what that life is like. Is there things that you hear people say that they perceived about being a monk that may not be the truth?
Yeah. See, now that I can definitely
I can speak
to that, because when I was thinking about the fitness myths, I'm like, I don't really know, but that I can definitely speak to. A lot of people think that monks are more holy because they're monks, but they're just like me and you, and that's a big myth. And it's always funny. I loved when I would have people come visit me, and I would say I live at a monastery, and they'd be like, okay, and it would just be amazing to see when they walk through the door, their preconceived notions floating around them, and then watch their bubbles get burst as they start to actually meet monks and start to interface. And, you know, that to me was always quite entertaining, because I had the same thing when I first went up there. That monks are going to be these really, really holy people. They're going to be at a higher plane of existence than us, and their connection with God's going to be stronger than mine. And, you know, and the reality is their practice of their connection might be greater, or they might do it more, but they're just like you and me. You know, they make mistakes, they have feelings and emotions. Sometimes they even swear, believe it or not.
What?
I know.
Like when they stub their toe or something?
Yeah, totally. Or if you piss them off. Or if I personally piss them off.
Really? Tell me more about that. How do you piss a monk off so he swears at you?
Usually when I'm training them, and I'm giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
You know, or just, you know, haranguing them a little bit about their fitness protocol.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's usually in jest or in fun. It's never like a true curse.
Right.
They're more into giving out blessings than curses. But, yeah. So, and then another one might be that, only, spiritual people or only religious people can go to a monastery. Because I've had friends who didn't want to come because they're like, well, I don't believe in God, or I don't, I'm not religious anymore. Or I'm spiritual, not religious, or whatever they're saying. And anybody can go. And regardless of what your relationship to God is, either not believing or believing, and however you believe or don't believe, you will get something out of spending time at that specific monastery for sure.
And where is it? Where is that monastery?
It's in Big Sur. It's called the New Camaldoli Hermitage. It's in a really beautiful remote area. No cell phones. So once you get up there, your cell phone doesn't work, which is one of the beauties of it, because literally you are disconnected. And in today's day and age, disconnection is a scary thing for a lot of us, even though we may not necessarily realize it. It can be. So getting to go up there and just having it sort of taken away from you, sort of, I don't want to say forces, but really invites you to be present with what's going on with you and the environment and surroundings that you're in, which are absolutely beautiful.
And what's is it all like a week long, or can you go like a day visit?
You could totally, yeah. So if you want to go up and just not even stay, you can go and you can visit, and there's a beautiful bookstore, a chapel, and just gorgeous views. I mean, some of the best views in California. If you wanted to stay, you could stay for one night. I don't know if they have a 2-night minimum now or what, but when I was living up there, you could stay for one night. I would recommend, if you are going to stay up there, to do it for at least 3 nights, right? Because it takes a day or two to unwind, and then you really sort of start dropping into the magic of the place and what it has to offer. You could stay as long as you wanted, as long as they had vacancy. So it's really kind of up to the individual. Again, it's not super structured. And from time to time, they do preached retreats. One of the preached retreats that I did that I loved was Father Michael Fish. He does a retreat on the Camino de Santiago, and he's walked the Camino 4 times now.
Wow.
Yeah, and just he's the way that I would describe. You remember going to your first RKC and like how Pavel commands the room, and you're like, wow, that's some impressive stuff right there. He is the spiritual version of Pavel in the sense of the way he commands the room. He's definitely a totally different style. He's not going to call you comrade or anything like that. But it's like when I was listening to him preach his retreat, I would even say in a lot of ways more taken and more just like, holy smokes, this guy fully is embodying what he's preaching here. So and he preaches actually down here sometimes, but if you ever have an opportunity to check out his Camino retreat, because you don't have to have gone to it and you don't have to intend to go to it, he makes it about how do you make your life a Camino? How do you make your life a pilgrimage? And I think he does 3 different ones. I went to the 3rd one, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to go in sequence. You don't have to go to all of them. You can go to 1, 2, 3, and you're going to get a shit ton out of it. Because he's a deep man and very very compelling.
You've done a bit of a walkabout in India also.
Yeah, that was less of a walkabout. That was more of a visit. But I did do a pilgrimage while I was there. I believe it was called the Mata Vaishnu Devi, and it was up in the Himalayas. And it was just a one day thing, but it was profound because we did it under the full moon, and really powerful, really, really powerful. We took a bus for like 10 hours to get there, and then we started probably at like 11:40, hiked until about 4 a.m. and then hiked back down, got done by 8, took the bus back. It was cool. But definitely less of a pilgrimage and more of a sort of cultural immersion. Not that cultural immersion doesn't happen in pilgrimage, but in pilgrimage, from my understanding and my experience of it, is that you're not there for touristy things, and I was definitely in India to see the sights and the touristy stuff. However, on pilgrimage, if you are called to go to a touristy site, there's no reason not to. You're not supposed to avoid them because you're on pilgrimage, but it's part of learning how to listen and to discern where you're being asked to go.
Mm-hmm. When I talked to you when you came back from that, and you said your big takeaway was the stark differences between, of course, India and the United States, and the things that you had here as opposed to there, and it kind of was an eye opener of just the areas that you went to.
Oh yeah, it's a totally different world. It's much more, I guess, raw. Mm-hmm. I would say. The thing I didn't really, it's like anytime you go anywhere, your perspective is shifted. Usually when you come back, and I've been in different parts of Europe and all throughout the United States, and things are fairly similar, but there things were very different in the sense that not everything was like perfectly manicured, and there was a lot of garbage everywhere. It was very dirty. But at the same token, you see a lot of suffering, but I don't necessarily know that the people see themselves as suffering. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives the outside perspective of, wow, like I'm perceiving them as suffering, but I don't think this guy perceives himself as suffering. So then it sort of shines a light on the relativeness of suffering.
Yeah. They probably, look at us and the rat race and the cell phones, and it's like, that's an awful existence.
But what's wild about India is that's happening there too.
Yeah.
Like they got their cell phones, and their middle class is growing, and it's an interesting world, and I loved it. I loved the way it felt. I definitely, I felt very alive there, and I was prepared for it to be really hard for me to go and for there to be a big shock. But for whatever reason, I wasn't super shocked when I got there. When I came back, I definitely felt the culture shock and like, wow, how do we live like this and they live like that? And, a lot of those questions came up, and like, how is it that there's such a, disparity, mm-hmm. I think is the word, in resources, and, why is it this way here and that way there? And, but there's no real answer to the question, so it's almost kind of a pointless question. But, it definitely made me think about that stuff, and then eventually I just kind of get to the point of like, stop judging these things, stop saying this is good and that's bad, or that's bad and this is good, and start accepting like that's how it is there and this is how it is here, and how do I adapt when I'm here, and how do I adapt when I'm there, and how do I show up and be a loving person in conditions that aren't perfect. How do I not change when circumstances change, or how do I allow those circumstances to change me in a positive way? But it's definitely, it's a different place, and I'm thankful for what I experienced when I was over there, and there's so much beauty and so much, like I've rarely seen people as devout and as faithful as the Indian people that I came in contact with. I went to every type of temple and every type of church that I could find when I was out there, and I would go and pray with whomever I was with, and you start to realize that at the heart or at the center of prayer is love. And regardless of how you pray or who or what you're praying to, it's still the same act. And to be able to share that with somebody who lives halfway around the globe, who's never met you before, and to share the feeling of faith, mm-hmm. or the experience of faith, or the reality of faith with others that don't know you is an amazing thing. It starts to bring that sort of idea of we're more alike than we are different to the forefront, right? Because at the essence, I think we all are from love and looking to return to love. And I think for some of us it's harder than others, but I think that's ultimately what the journey is about. So that definitely mirrored that to me and reminded me that, it's about love. And if you're focusing on other things, you're off target. And it's interesting because I've been thinking a lot about the word sin. And the word sin, as I was taught.
You may want to say, because this is audio, you're kissing at a cat.
Yeah, I was kissing at a kitty cat.
I'm thinking a lot about sin.
Right, I forgot we were recording. Yeah, the way that I've come to understand sin versus the way I grew up to understand it is that it simply means missing the mark. And I think the term sin has gotten such a bad rap because people have identified with it being a specific way that they try to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just get rid of it altogether. But if I want to get good at darts and I'm aiming at the bullseye, I can't just stop throwing darts because I don't like it when I miss, or I don't like the idea of darts, especially if I want to be a good dart thrower. So same thing with sin, it's like if you recognize it as missing the mark, then you start realizing if the mark is love, whenever we're not acting in loving ways, then we're technically sinning. Mm-hmm. And I don't see it as the bad thing that I grew up to understand it as. I see it as, I'm not being who I'm designed or meant to be.
Yeah.
So
what also that's really great is not to beat yourself up when you don't hit the mark. Because how often are you going to bullseye every time you throw a dart?
Exactly.
So instead of being like, I sinned again. I sinned. I'm just a sinner. I'll never hit the mark.
Right. It's sort of like when you're throwing the kettlebells. Every time you throw a crappy pass, the other person has to compensate, but you get that opportunity to use the space in between to sort of feed yourself back what you did that caused that, and then you can throw the next one better. But if you judge yourself and you beat yourself up while the bell's not in your hands, you're not taking that time productively to recognize, maybe there's a better way to throw it. So it's the same idea, exactly what you're saying. Like, to beat yourself up is really just sort of a self-sabotage. It doesn't really ever allow you to, progress.
Yeah, there's no growth in that. So a burning question for me is, like, how the heck do you not have structure in your life and still survive and make money and exist in this? Because for me, that's kind of, I get up in the morning, I go to work, and that's kind of like, okay, this is kind of why I'm getting up in the morning is, that's my structure, and I'm very structured. And I mean, like, I've had a whole podcast on just my morning structure, and I calendar everything, and so what I'm leading at is, how do I do that? I don't necessarily want to be like that, especially forever. And now that we're planning a family, I don't want to be so structured. I want to have lots of space in my day and my life to spend with the people that I love, but still provide for my family. And that's what I've been really dealing with and kind of battling with, is how am I going to set my life up and my future up for my family and yet still be there for my family. That's the last thing I want, is for my kids to grow up and like, I didn't know Dad because he was always hustling,
Right.
So
that's a great question. That's a really good question. Keep in mind I'm single.
Yeah.
I have Hope's my girlfriend, but we're not married and we don't have children. We're moving in that direction, but we're still working towards coming together. So how I do it personally is I spend a lot of time in prayer. And before I came here, I went to church and I prayed. And I just asked, God, show me what you want me to do this week. Show me how you want me to better serve. Like, what do you want? What do you want? Help me understand that. And I didn't necessarily get any answers while I was praying. And being okay with that is what helps me, sort of move forward, because I know that at some point the answer is going to arise. Either, maybe through a conversation, maybe a song on the radio, maybe just an idea in my head. As far as, I still have to make money, I still have to, pay bills and things like that. But I don't make it my key focus. It's part of my life. When I went to Italy the first time, I went with my brother, and one of the things that blew our mind was they don't live to work, they work to live, right? And you've heard, don't live to eat, eat to live, right? So it's the same idea. So I could work my butt off and make tons and tons of money, but like you said, not have the quality relationships that I do have. Or I can work and get the money that I need as I need it, right? As I continue to grow what it is that I'm growing, and just, go step by step instead of trying to acquire perhaps more than what I need. And I live very frugally. I pretty much wear the same shirts and shorts every day. I wear the same shoes. Once those shoes wear out, then I get a new pair, I try not to live excessively. I try not to, buy things that I don't really need. I spend less money than the average person, so that helps a lot. And I think that's a big part of it is, so earlier you asked, what's a takeaway from the monastery? Another one that I would say that's up there with the others that I mentioned, want versus need. What do I want and what do I need? Because I think historically I've confused want and need. And at this stage of my life, I realize a lot of times my wants have nothing to do with what I need. So being able to discern that and make that be a foundational question I ask myself when I'm about to make a purchase. Like, do I really need this? Or is this going to be something that I have to lug around? Because I'm pretty mobile at the moment. I'm just kind of floating around. So if it's one more thing that I got to carry that's not going to, as you mentioned, that gentleman was saying, why buy things that don't give you joy?
Yeah.
It's, for me, joy and utility, And at some point, say I buy a house somewhere and I settle down a little more, well, then there'll be a little more joy and not just utility. But those are the two things I look at. It's like, okay, what's the utility of this thing, and how much do I really enjoy it? And if I absolutely need the utility of it, then, okay, it's probably going to bring me some joy. But if I really enjoy it, but it doesn't really bring me any utility, and then I have to kind of weigh, like, how worth it is that?
Yeah.
Is it worth it for me to include that in my life? Because then it becomes one more thing that subconsciously or unconsciously, I don't know, however you want to say it, I have to keep track of.
Yeah.
And right now I've done I think a pretty good job of, getting rid of things that don't really serve me or serve sort of the life path that I'm on.
Yeah. Well, it's probably no coincidence that I just heard that interview today about frugality. So that's what we're talking about. And, living frugally and whatever you purchase and buy and spend your money on in time, and your time is, does this bring you joy? Does this bring you love? And the takeaway that I got from that is it's really easy to save money and time if you have that question right there, right there for you. Does this bring me love or joy?
Yeah, and is it useful?
Is it useful? Yeah.
If it's not, again, it's okay to have things in your life that bring you love and joy, but a lot of people then just go after love and joy. But is it useful? Is this going to make me a better person?
Yeah.
Is it going to allow me to help others? Is it, whatever, however you want to apply it to yourself. So as far as what I'm hearing you say is that you're in the process of trying to find a way to be able to have a surplus of time to spend with your family while still being able to be a good provider. And I think that's something that is a deeply personal question, and I think you can find those answers, and I think they're not going to be in any textbooks. I don't think a business person who brings you to a seminar is going to necessarily be able to give you those answers. They might be able to point you in the direction, but I think the true answer to those questions are in your heart, and I think you know the answer to those questions. But I feel like a big part of it for me has been unlearning what other people have taught me.
Yeah.
And because if you think about it, I was raised by my mother and father, and I saw how they did it.
Yeah.
And I saw how they did it for the majority of my life. So I assume that that's how it's done. And it wasn't until, maybe high school or late grade school where you start spending the night over at your friend's house and you realize, whoa, they do it different than we do.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And then when you get to college or whatever, and you start realizing people's experiences were vastly different than the way that you experienced it. And then I start recognizing, wow, these possibilities are so different than what I ever imagined, and then you start looking at them, and I think that's where imagination comes into play. I mean, just the fact that you're doing the podcast thing, and you have these other sort of streams of potential income. I think that's a great way to do it. And again, the questions of, does it bring joy and love, and is it useful?
Yeah.
And if those three questions are yes, then I think you'll profit from it. I think you'll prosper, and I think others will prosper. And I think when others are prospering, we all do. I think the idea of competition's a fun idea, but I think it's not sustainable. That's why the teams practice so much and only compete like once a week or twice a week, but they're practicing a lot more than they're competing because they have to cooperate together to actually be able to be a team. So if we look at that model and we recognize that there's so much competition in just about any industry, it's like, well, what are we gaining from the competition? What's to say that cooperating with others isn't going to bring us further? So I don't know. How do you cooperate, and how do you bring value to other people?
That's a great point. Yeah, that team analogy really brings it home. Yeah.
They're not competing every single day.
Right. Yeah.
So competition's good because it can sharpen you and can show you kind of where you're at because it tests you. But most growth's done in cooperation. So yeah. So my thoughts on your question are follow your heart and know that you have all the answers to answer that question in you. And I've always had huge respect for you from the moment we worked together at the RKC to obviously today. But you're a very talented man, and I think people appreciate talent. But beyond that, you're a good man. So you could be a talented asshole, and I don't have anything to do with you. But because you're a good person and you're talented, and we happen to have good rapport and connect with one another, yeah, I'd love to be on your podcast and talk to you. And I think most people feel that way. I could be wrong, but it seems like that would make sense to me, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for not being a jerk.
Yeah. You're welcome. Talk about the kettlebell passing. We've done that a couple of times, and I love kettlebells, and that's one of the reasons what I love most about them is you can throw them hand to hand, you can flip them, you can do that type of workout where you can't do that with obviously a barbell or a dumbbell. So talk about that, and how did that come about? How did you start doing that?
Oddly enough, it started here in San Diego. Brett Jones and I were filming kettlebell partner passing for strength coaches and personal trainers. And between takes, I was just like, hey, let's throw a bell back and forth and see what happens. And he was open to it, so we did. And I thought it was super cool. I think he thought it was cool, but I really loved it. And so I just kind of kept pursuing it. When I moved to LA, I met this dude, Robert McKee, and he and I started passing and innovating different patterns and stuff. And it just sort of opened up to all these possibilities that just me playing with the kettlebell by myself didn't offer. And I really, I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it because I'm a relational person. I like connecting with people. I like doing projects with people. I think projects are fun. And even though it's not necessarily a project, it's a cooperative effort. So I started realizing it had huge potential for building relationships and building connection. And I just kept innovating it. Unfortunately, Robert passed away in, I think, 2008 or 2009. I don't remember when, but so that kind of put an end to our innovation. But I had met Blair Ferguson and Jeremy Laport by that point, and Blair helped me out a lot. Jeremy helped me out a lot. And then, since then, I just kind of been trying to pass with whoever will pass with me and continuing to grow it. It's a remarkable system in that, like I said, it has huge relational capabilities.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's super rad. It's super fun to do. And when you introduced it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all over this, because there's communication in it.
Totally.
You're being with somebody else. Your eye contact, and it's if you're not in communication, or you get in your head, or whatever it is, everything happens skin out, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start getting your head about, like you said, beating yourself up about the last pass or blah blah blah, boom, you drop it. It just doesn't work any longer.
Yeah.
Something goes, not bad, but it just stops. Yeah. Totally. Communication stops.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once the communication starts to deteriorate, so does the passing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's hard to explain. I always tell people, try it and experience it. Once you experience it, then tell me what you think. Explain it to me, like what's going on for you, because I know what my experience is, but everybody that I throw with has a different experience.
Yeah.
And it just depends on where you're at and what's going on in your life. And it can illuminate things. It can help you recognize areas that maybe you're strong, and potentially areas that you're not as strong. The other thing that I love about it is it gets you really strong in unconventional ways. So the partner passing in some ways is a representative of what and how I live my life, in the sense that, like, I don't have a ton of structure, and with the passing there is structure, and it's built in for safety. But once you have those foundational components, then you can flow with the bell any way you want. You don't need to tell me how you're going to flip it or what you're going to do, but I'll just adapt.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And then, as we talked about before, throwing the bell back and forth it's like a communication or a conversation. So by having that conversation with each other, the more we do it, the better we get at it, and the better we get at it, the less we have to spend time on the actual verbal communication of it. We just sort of have a understanding of what one another are doing. So I'm noticing it's about 20-1.
No, this is an hour behind.
Oh, thank God. Okay, because I need to be in La Jolla by 1.
You glanced at my watch, and
I was like,
I haven't set my watch.
I was like, oh no,
since
I'm going to be late.
Coming up on daylight savings, I'm going to be right on.
You're going to be right on. You just like doing the mathematics.
Yeah. In March, actually, like March 13th, my watch is going to be correct again. Yeah.
Good.
That's my structure.
I feel a lot better. So for somebody who's structured, that's an interesting way to structure.
That's my rebel.
I'm not going to set that clock.
Actually, the little pin on the side busted. I hit it against something, and I'm like, well, I love the watch, and it's an hour fast. So yeah, no problem. I'm not late. Well, actually, I am, because I just do the math. I'm like, all right. Were you influenced at all by some of the old time lifters and the kettlebellers from the past, from doing kettlebell passing and stuff like that?
Jeff Martone definitely got me interested in the juggling stuff. I saw him do it, and I'm like, I gotta try it. And then obviously I had done that for a while before I ever passed with anybody, which is why it's part of the partner passing system, because it builds on how to throw with someone, or how to understand how the bell flips. So he was really the main sort of influence for juggling. But as far as passing goes, I'd never seen it before. I'd never seen anybody do it. It wasn't until, maybe 4 or 5 years later that you start seeing people doing it, and then you start seeing that people had done it. And then obviously in Russia they do partner passing or something like it, but it's more for a performance.
It's
more
a performance, so. For sure. Which
I've seen some incredible performances as of recent. The partner passing is more of it's more of a relational thing. It's more about the person you're passing with than the people that are watching. Mm-hmm. So that it's kind of a cool spin-off of it. They definitely do some stuff that I don't incorporate into the partner passing, just because I don't. I'm sure it could be, and that's kind of what I hope. Like at this point, I've innovated and designed it in a way that I feel it's a really solid foundation. And now what I would like is for people to potentially learn what I'm teaching, and then take it and build on it, because it's it's an inclusive system, and it includes people, and the more people who are doing it, the greater the imagination. Ideally I would love to have people anywhere in the world that I could be like, hey, I'm in Atlanta, you want to throw? Hey, I'm in, Sicily, you want to throw? So it's really more just about promoting connection, and this is, maybe I'll go out there a little bit on a limb, but I think it has potential to promote world peace, but that's just me. I'm maybe over optimistic, but I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think when people start doing it and start feeling the connection and realizing, like, man, this is an amazing experience. Because really, when I first started throwing the bells, I thought this is a great way to get strong, because this is gonna hit me in all the ways that conventional kettlebell lifting do not. And because that was the impetus, I wasn't really thinking about how is this going to affect me otherwise. But as I continue to do it, then I start seeing, like, holy smokes, there's way more to this than just the physical aspect, which brings us back to what myths would you like to debunk? And I would like to debunk the myth that exercise and fitness and strength training is solely physical. There's a spiritual component to it that oftentimes is not acknowledged. And one of the things I like about the partner passing is when you do it, you start to get a feel for, oh, this goes way beyond physical. So, and again, it depends on how open-minded you are and how willing you are to experience it. But I think you've probably had a little bit of a taste of it when we've thrown, that it goes way beyond physical.
Definitely, like you said, I think you sum it up in connection. If you can connect people all around the world, I mean, there's
what do we have to fight about?
Yeah, exactly. And you get to, like, people are like you and similar, and your differences go out the window, kind of thing. All that is set aside when you're
cooperating.
Doing it. Cooperating.
As soon as you're throwing a bell at me and I'm throwing a bell at you, and I realize your intent is not negative, that it's a positive, cooperative thing, then a synergy happens that allows for us to make this thing happen. It creates an opportunity for two people to express something together versus one person just expressing.
Right.
There's a mutuality, and like you said, differences go away, because in those moments we're just humans. Otherwise, say, we come together and, there's a Protestant and a Catholic or whatever, their differences often prevent them from collaborating on things. But as soon as they start throwing the bell back and forth, they forget about their titles. It's also potentially a way to have organizations not be so hierarchical. Not that hierarchy is a bad thing, but at the same token, I think hierarchy can limit creativity. But what do I know? I've avoided corporate work for my entire life. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's the most creative place ever, and I've been missing out. But who knows?
I don't think that's the case. But what's a big, or what's a takeaway that you would want people listening to take away, put in their life, or introduce themselves?
Good question. You're full of good questions today, Robert. Don't be afraid to try things. And vulnerability is the true path to strength if you truly want to be strong. And love one another. Boom.
Drop the mic. That's so great. Love one another. Yeah.
Love one another.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Go do that, guys. Try new things. What was the last one was so good I forgot what the second thing I said was. Do you remember?
Vulnerability.
Oh yeah. Boom. Yeah, because it's like, well, should I say love one another, or is that a little too, like, I don't know. Is it? No, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to say love one another, because that's really what I think we're here to do.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, are you on social media? Are you on I know you're on Facebook, but any other social outlets or anything like that? Or how can people get a hold of you if they would like to, or if you would like them to?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Facebook, Michael Castrogiovanni. There's a couple of us, believe it or not, but my profile picture says "Love is always the answer," so pretty easy to find. I just recently Started an Instagram account, not by will, but I was forced to do it. Thank you, Karen Smith. I appreciate it. So I'm there, I guess. And my email is probably the best way. It's mcgiovanni@hotmail.com. And yes, I still use Hotmail.
Whoa, check you out. And I'll have all his contact info, what he just said, in the show notes so people can find you and all that kind of stuff. So, well, it's been really great chatting with you. I know this is one of many. I've got a million other questions, and I'm going to save them for a part 2.
Nice. I look forward to that.
Yeah, so really thank you so much for spending your time.
Yeah, thank you for encouraging me to do this. I tend to try to stay away from these kind of things.
People are going to be like, what? You got Michael to sit down for an hour and talk?
Pretty much.
Said, I tripped him. And
yeah, I am hogtied right now. So I figured might as well talk.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before you take off, a couple of things. For one, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I know your time is very valuable, and you spending it listening to this show means a lot to me. Also, if you would like to leave a comment or see any of the links, so I have links to the people that we mentioned and also the places and things that we mentioned. Anything that I could link, I put the link on the robertbudd.net/podcast. Also, if you would like to rate the show, which I would love for you to do, go on iTunes and please rate it. One last thing is if you would like to get my newsletter, and I would say it's monthly, not always consistently monthly, but it's pretty much monthly. And it's all the things that I'm doing in my life that I'm life hacking, if that's a good term for it. Anything that has to do with money, time, workout, food, to optimize my life. And I want to share it with you, whether it's my idea or somebody else's. I just throw it on there. So I think that's it. And until next time, bye for now.